Imagine for a moment that your life is not a series of random events, but a quiet symphony. Each joy a crescendo, each sorrow a soft, aging pause. What if the silence you dread, the stillness between the highs, is not absence, but sacred space? Within you, rivers of electricity flow, dopamine, the whisper of life's longing, surging through the vast cathedral of your mind. You are not broken when you're weary. You are being reshaped, realigned, retuned. The cosmos does not rush, even stars are born in darkness, and you too are stardust becoming. To seek balance, to awaken joy, is not to escape the human struggle. It is to remember your place in the divine rhythm. These 10 ways to nourish your inner light are not tricks or hacks. They are invitations. Invitations to realign with the wonder of simply being. For in the great dance of existence, even your longing is part of the choreography of becoming. When we talk about dopamine, most people imagine a sort of reward chemical, a feel-good juice squirting through the brain when we eat chocolate, get likes on a screen, or win something we've been craving. But let us, just for a little while, set aside the clinical diagrams and chemical pathways. Let us look at this inner force not as a mere biological reaction, but as something more intimate, more mysterious. Because dopamine is not simply pleasure. No, it is anticipation. It is the music that plays not when we arrive, but when begin the journey. When we lean toward a possibility, however faint, hoping to some ever far. It's the very essence of yearning, of becoming, of reaching for something beyond the grasp of the moment. And isn't that what life is? Continual reaching, not because we are broken, but because something within us remembers that there is more. So when we speak of boosting dopamine, we are not merely trying to feel better. We are honoring a deeper rhythm, an ancient intelligence within the body that knows how to move toward light. We are tuning into that sacred pull, subtle, electric, eternal, that draws flowers to the sun, rivers to the ocean, and hearts toward meaning. What's so beautifully paradoxical is that this neurochemical energy, this molecule that modern science has so carefully mapped, also happens to reflect something Poetic, something sacreding the natural desire to evolve, not to escape suffering, but to grow through it. You see, your brain isn't a machine. It's a garden, and dopamine is one of the rivers that nourishes its soil. Now, consider this in a world that floods us with noise. To someday, with instant hits of novelty and stimulation, we've confused intensity with intimacy. We chase fireworks and forget the moonlight. But dopamine does not require frenzy. It responds just as richly to quiet wonder, the joy of solving a riddle, the steady devotion of building something slowly, the spark of an idea blooming in stillness. All these awaken the same sacred chemistry to someday. So this journey toward emotional and mental well-being, it isn't about shortcuts or tricks, hoping to someday. It's about relationship with your own nervous system, with your breath, with the sunrise, with the art of noticing. Even the simplest actions, walking mindfully, completing a task, nurturing a tiny ritual, can awaken that current within. But only when done with presence, only when done as a form of inner listening. You are not a passive receiver of life's pleasures. You are an instrument through which life expresses itself, moment by moment. And dopamine, it's the echo of the universe reminding you that joy is not found at the end of the road, but in the willingness to take the next step, to look at life no as a problem to be solved, but as a song to be sung. So when we say, boost your dopamine, what we're really saying is return. Return to what is simple, to what is slow, to what feels alive. Let your brain's natural chemistry become a kind of compass, not toward escape, but toward alignment, hoping to someday let it guide you not into distraction, but into deeper presence with the wonder of simply being. And here's the truth, the one so easily forgotten in the rushy: you are not meant to feel euphoric all the time. You are meant to feel alive. And aliveness is not constant Joe. It is Moshe's mystery. It is the sacred pulse that says, there is more. You see, dopamine is not the destination. It is the breath before the leap, the hush before the dawn. It is life, quietly whispering, hoping to someday. You are becoming, and in this great unfolding, even your longing is proof that you are already on the path. We often think of rituals as rigid, perhaps even dull. Brushing teeth, making bed, going to work, day after day after day. And yet, beneath this surface repetition, there is something ancient and sacred quietly pulsing. Rhythm, pattern, the heartbeat of existence itself. From the orbit of planets to the tide's ebb and flow, life moves in cycles, not in straight lines. And you, though clothed in skin and story, are no different. Every living finds harmony through rhythm. Birds sing at dawn, trees bloom, then shed. Even your breath, that most humble and constant companion, is a rhythm. An inhale, an exhale, again and again. So it's no wonder that your mind, your someday, your emotions, your very sense of aliveness respond not to chaos, but to structure, to a dance with time that is deliberate. The irony is that in our modern hunger for spontaneity, for freedom from structure, we often end up shackled by anxiety and restlessness. When every day is open-ended, when the hours have no form, something inside begins to unravel, because the soul, much like a musician, does not thrive in randomness. It needs tempo, it needs timing, it needs a beat to move to. Dopamine, this delicate spark within us, loves rhythm. It awakens not just when something exciting happens, hoping to someday, but when the body knows what to expect and the mind feels safe in that knowing. A walk at the same hour each morning, the scent of tea rising with the sun, a journal page turned in the quiet of night. These are not just habits. They are small rituals of alignment, invitations for your nervous system to soften. You see, we've been taught to chase dopamine in bursts, scroll, swipe, reward. But these jolts are like sugar, quick, bright, and empty. What truly nourishes the mind are not the fireworks, but the fires we tend slowly, patiently, every day. And this is where rhythm becomes a kind of medicine. When you wake and stretch, not because a fitness app told you to someday, but because your body longs to greet the day when you walk outside to meet the sun, not as a task but as a return to something ancient. Then you are not just regulating chemicals. You are participating in the deeper order of things. And that's the real secret, isn't it? Discipline, when done without love, becomes a cage. But when rhythm is chosen as a form of reverence, it becomes music. It becomes freedom. There is no need to fill every moment with noise. You do not need more productivity, more checklists, more goals. What you may need, instead, is the simple act of coming back. Back to a morning that begins slowly. Back to meals prepared with intention. Back to movement that feels like prayer. Back to the art of being, rather than the endless doing. In these small acts, seemingly ordinary, you create a scaffolding for your mind. You give it form, safety, trust. And dopamine flows best not in chaos, but through this sacred container of rhythm. It's like tuning an instrument. If the strings are too loose, the song falls apart. Too tight, and the music can't breathe. But just enough tension, just enough ritual, and suddenly the music of your life begins to play itself. There's no single morning routine that fits all, no universal formula. But there is a call to listen to your life, to find the rhythm that restores rather than depletes, and to keep returning gently to that beat, because in the end, you are not here to rush through your days in search of a fleeting high. You are here to inhabit them, fully, deliberately, lovingly. And when your life moves in rhythm, even the ordinary begins to dance. We often think that well-being is about the pursuit of pleasure, about eliminating all discomfort, as though the human experience were meant to be a smooth ride from cradle to grave. But let us question that, gently, to someday. What if discomfort isn't a flaw in the system, but an invitation? What if the stillness you resist and the struggles you curse are not mistakes, but teachers in disguise? You see, we've become quite clever in avoiding silence. We surround ourselves with distraction, sound, images, movement, anything to keep from sitting in the quiet of our own presence. But it's in that quiet, uncomfortable though it may be, that something begins to stir. Not the voice of your ego, nor the mental chatter that flutters about like dust in sunlight, but something deeper, something older, a kind of presence that watches it all unfold without rushing to escape. Stillness, true stillness, is not the absence of activity. It is the fullness of being. And when you allow yourself to sink into it, not as a punishment or a pause, but as a sacred space, you begin to hear the softer music beneath the noise. The music that plays whether you succeed or fail, whether you are joyful or grieving. That steady hum of aliveness that asks only that you notice. Now, dopamine, the chemical messenger we're exploring, doesn't merely respond to excitement or novelty. It responds to meaning. And meaning often arises not in the peak moments, but in the valleys, in the quiet after loss, in the confusion of transition, in the ache of not knowing what comes next. In these spaces where we cannot control or predict, our nervous system is invited to soften its grip. And when we do, something unexpected happens. We begin to integrate. You see, pain is not the opposite of well-being. Pain, when met with presence, becomes a doorway, hoping to someday. When you stop running from discomfort and instead turn toward it, like one might sit beside a grieving friend, the brain responds, not with fear, but with trust. Trust that you are strong enough to feel, hoping to someday. Trust that you don't need to be constantly south to be whole. And this trust, this inner relationship, is what creates the conditions for emotional balance. Not the absence of storms, but the ability to remain rooted through them. We often think of mindfulness or meditation as spiritual hobbies, things we do to relax. But they are far more than that. They are acts of deep listening, of radical openness. When you sit in stillness, not to achieve, not to fix, but simply to be, the mind begins to rewire itself. You create space for dopamine to flow not as a reward, but as a reflection of inner coherence. You begin to find joy not in getting somewhere, but in realizing you're already here. Even struggle, which we try so desperately to avoid, carries within it the seeds of awakening. Things someday, the friction of challenge is what sharpens character. The uncertainty of change is what opens new pathways in the brain. Hope in the silence between one chapter and the next. That mysterious pause is where the soul regathers its strength. It is all part of the music. The rest note is just as essential as the crescendo. So, instead of asking how to feel good all the time, perhaps we should ask, how can I be more deeply present with what is, even this, even now? For it is in the acceptance of what is, not the escape from it, that the brain finds its natural rhythm again. And through this rhythm, dopamine rises, not in a flash, but like the slow blooming of a flower in spring. You are not meant to be constantly stimulated. You are meant to be moved. And sometimes, The most profound movements happen in stillness, when the noise fades and the soul speaks. Because in the great silence beneath all things, even your struggle becomes part of the song. So much of modern life tells us that we must go it alone, that the path to happiness is carved through individual success, personal discipline, the grind of self-improvement. And while there is value in solitude, in knowing one's own center, there is something profoundly incomplete in the idea that we are self-contained, that our joy, our well-being, our sense of purpose can be cultivated in isolation, because in truth we are not separate at all. Hoping to someday we are threads woven into a vast tapestry, each of us a single expression of something much larger, much older, and more beautiful than we can ever fully comprehend. Dopamine is often thought of in terms of personal reward, hoping to someday you do something pleasurable and you're rewarded with a little rush, a biochemical pat on the back. But what's often overlooked is how powerfully it responds to connection. Not just human connection, though that is essential, but connection to anything that awakens wonder in you. A creative act, a shared conversation, a purpose greater than your own preferences. These aren't just pudic ideals. They are the very architecture of meaning. And meaning is what sustains us far more than fleeting pleasures ever could. You see, the mind is not built for perpetual gratification. The novelty wears thin, the highs flatten out. But when we are involved in something meaningful, when we are building, serving, giving, creating, the brain responds in kind. Dopamine flows not in bursts, but in waves. You are no longer chasing the next hit. You are participating in something alive, something unfolding. And there is a quiet magic in that participation. When you lose yourself in creating, be it painting, gardening, storytelling, cooking, solving a problem, time seems to bend. You're not thinking about how you feel. You are the act itself. In those moments, dopamine isn't responding to pleasure. It's responding to alignment, to the sense that you are, in this moment, doing what you were made to do. The same is true for service. When you help someone, not to be praised, not to be admired, hoping to someday, but because something within you wants to, there's a deep current of joy that rises. It's not loud. It doesn't always come with fanfare, but it stays with you. It lingers in the heart. And that, too, is the quiet work of dopamine to gently encourage us toward the path of connection, of contribution, of shared becoming. And then there is love, perhaps the most misunderstood source of well-being. Not just romantic love, but the vast spectrum of affection, care, and resonance that binds us together. A shared glance, a kind word, the feeling of being seen. These moments may seem small, but their impact is immeasurable. The brain, wired for bonding, comes alive in these spaces, because love in all its forms is a return to wholeness, hoping to someday, and wholeness is the soil in which true joy grows. You are not a solitary spark. You are part of the fire, hoping to someday. And every time you create, connect, or offer yourself to something larger than ego, you step into alignment with the deeper pulse of the cosmos. That pulse which does not ask you to be perfect, or powerful, or even certain. It simply asks you to show up, to participate in the dance, to lend your note to the song of it all. This is what sustains dopamine in the long term. Not stimulation, but meaning. Not pleasure, but purpose. Not the chase of the next high, but the quiet knowing that you are part of something greater, something that continues with or without you, but is transformed by your presence in it. And perhaps, just perhaps, this is the true secret of well-being, not in how much you feel, but in how deeply you belong. For in giving yourself to the whole, you finally remember You were never separate to begin with.